On a Tuesday afternoon, Marcus gets a message from someone friendly, professional, and genuinely knowledgeable about money. Nothing about it feels wrong. Denise receives the same message from the same person, describing the same opportunity, using almost word for word the same explanation. Marcus reads it twice, feels a small flicker of excitement, and starts thinking about how much he could reasonably put in. Denise reads it once, types a single question back, and never hears from that person again. Not a reply, not a follow-up, nothing. That's the entire difference. Not intelligence, not experience, not some instinct for danger that one of them was born with. Every scam in this video is specifically designed to survive your skepticism. It expects you to be cautious, and it's built to get past that. What almost none of them survive is a direct question, asked out loud at the right moment. And there are 7 of them. We're counting down 7 patterns. Number 1 is completely legal, happens in an office with a nameplate on the door, and costs people more than all 6 others combined. Pattern number 7. Any promise of a guaranteed return with no meaningful downside, described with total confidence. The pitch Marcus hears sounds measured, not outlandish. 12 to 15%, monthly, consistently, from a strategy the person describes as low risk. Nobody promises him $1 million. That's the part people expect, and that's exactly why the effective version never does it. The number is deliberately believable, high enough to be exciting, low enough that it doesn't trip the alarm that a wild claim would. Here's the mechanism that makes it work. Risk and return are physically linked. There is no arrangement anywhere that removes risk and keeps the return. So when someone offers both, one of 2 things is true. Either the risk exists and is being hidden from you, or the return isn't real. Denise's question takes about 4 seconds to ask. What is the actual mechanism that produces this return, explained specifically? A legitimate answer is boring and specific. A scam answer is either vague or it changes shape slightly every time you ask it again. Pattern 7, and the question that breaks it. What is the actual mechanism? If nobody can explain where the money comes from, it comes from you. Pattern number 6. Any financial decision that comes attached to a deadline you didn't set yourself. The window closes Friday. Only a few spots left. The price goes up next month. The allocation is nearly full. Urgency works because it removes the one thing that protects you, which is time to think, check, and ask somebody else what they make of it. And notice how reasonable each version sounds. Limited availability is a real thing that exists in legitimate business, which is exactly what makes it usable here. But real financial opportunities have a specific property that fake ones don't. They tolerate delay because they're not dependent on your emotional state. An index fund does not care whether you buy it Tuesday or 3 Tuesdays from now. Neither does a savings account or a retirement contribution. Marcus feels the deadline as pressure to decide. Denise feels the deadline as information about the person who created it. Her question takes 5 seconds. What specifically breaks if I wait 1 week? Then she watches whether the answer is a fact or a feeling. Pattern 6, and the question that breaks it. What breaks if I wait a week? If the answer is only your enthusiasm, that was the product. Pattern number 5. Any opportunity where a meaningful part of your earnings depends on bringing in other people. The framing is almost never recruitment. It's community, or team building, or getting in early, or helping others access the same thing you found. Marcus is told the product sells itself, and that the people who do best are simply the ones who share it most enthusiastically with their network. What he's not told is the ratio. In structures like this, the overwhelming majority of participants earn less than they put in, And that's not a failure of the model. It's the arithmetic of the model. Payouts to earlier participants are funded by entries from later ones, which requires infinite growth in a finite population.
The math is not hidden or complicated. It just gets buried underneath language about mindset, belief, and how most people quit too early. Denise's question cuts straight through the framing in about 6 seconds. Where does the money come from if nobody new ever joins? If the honest answer is that revenue depends on recruitment continuing forever, you are not looking at a business. You're looking at a queue. Pattern 5, and the question that breaks it. Where does the money come from? Follow the revenue to its source, not to its story. Pattern number 4, complexity used as a substitute for credibility, where confusion is meant to read as sophistication. The explanation Marcus receives is dense with terminology. Arbitrage spreads, liquidity pools, structured yield, algorithmic positioning, proprietary models. He doesn't understand most of it. And critically, he doesn't say so, because not understanding feels like a deficiency in him rather than in the explanation. That reaction is the entire point of the complexity. It isn't there to inform you. It's there to make asking a follow-up question feel embarrassing. Here's the tell that holds up almost universally. People who genuinely understand a financial mechanism can explain it in plain language because they've had to before. Fund managers, accountants, and advisors explain complicated things to non-experts constantly. Clarity is a normal part of competence, not a rare gift. So when jargon arrives with no plain language version behind it, the jargon usually isn't describing something complicated. It's covering something that doesn't hold up. Denise's question takes 3 seconds and costs her nothing. Can you explain how this works without using any industry terms? Pattern 4, and the question that breaks it. Can you explain it without jargon? If they can't, they may not understand it either. 4 patterns down, 4 questions in your pocket. But the last one isn't hidden, isn't illegal, and won't set off a single alarm. Pattern number 3. Testimonials and screenshots from people you have no way to identify or verify.
Marcus scrolls through account screenshots showing steady gains, messages from members thanking the group, and photographs of people who look genuinely pleased than they are. Some of those winners are real. In any scheme with enough participants, a handful genuinely do profit, usually the earliest entrants, and their results are authentic. What you are never shown is the denominator. You see the people who won without ever seeing how many played, which makes the odds look completely different than they are. This is survivorship bias, and it's the same reason lottery advertising shows winners holding checks instead of the millions of people holding losing tickets. Denise's question reframes the entire display in about 5 seconds. Can you show me the people who lost money doing this? Legitimate investments are legally required to disclose losses and risks. A pitch that only ever surfaces winners is telling you what it's selected for. Pattern 3, and the question that breaks it, who's showing me the losses? Any group where nobody loses is a group that hides the ones who did. Pattern number 2, advice that presents itself as free, where the actual cost is embedded somewhere you won't look. Marcus attends a free financial seminar. There's no charge, no obligation, and the information he receives is genuinely accurate and useful.
At the end, there's a product. It's presented as the natural next step, and the fee is described as small, standard, and industry typical. 1.5% annually doesn't sound like much, and the number is chosen precisely because it doesn't. It sounds like a rounding error. On a portfolio that grows over 30 years, That fee doesn't take 1.5% of your money. It takes a substantial share of your final balance. Because the fee compounds against you every year in the same way returns compound for you, and 30 years is long enough for that to dominate the outcome. Nothing here is a scam in the legal sense. The seminar was real, the advice was accurate, and the fee was disclosed in a document he received.
Denise's question takes 4 seconds and changes what she's listening to. How exactly does the person giving me this advice get paid? Pattern 2, and the question that breaks it. How does this person get paid? Free advice is never free. It's paid for somewhere you're not looking. Pattern number 1, and this one is legal, licensed, regulated, and takes place in an office with a nameplate on the door. Marcus meets with a financial professional, credentialed, experienced, and genuinely trying to help him, with no intent to deceive anyone. That professional recommends a product. It is a legitimate product, it is suitable for Marcus, and it will probably perform acceptably over time. It also pays a commission, not disclosed as a headline, not hidden either, just present in the structure of how that person earns a living. Here's what makes this the most expensive pattern in the video. There's no lie anywhere in it. Everyone involved believes they're acting properly, and mostly they are. But incentives shape recommendations without anyone consciously deciding to be dishonest. If 2 suitable products exist and one pays more, the human mind reliably finds reasons to prefer it. That's not corruption. It's just how professional judgment works under a compensation structure, and it happens to advisors who would never knowingly harm a client. Denise's question takes 6 seconds and is the most useful one in this entire video. Would you still recommend this if it paid you nothing? Pattern 1, and the question that breaks it, would they recommend this if it paid nothing? The most expensive advice most people receive is entirely legal. So let's assemble the actual 10-second test, because all 7 of these collapse into something you can run in a single conversation. What is the mechanism? What breaks if I wait? Where does the money come from? Can you explain it plainly? Who lost money doing this? How do you get paid? And would you recommend this if it paid you nothing? 7 questions, and you will almost never need all of them. Most pitches fail on the first or second one and never reach the rest. Notice what none of these questions require. Not financial expertise, not knowing the products, not being able to catch someone in a contradiction. They only require asking. Which brings us to the reason Marcus keeps getting caught, and it has nothing to do with how much he knows. Marcus knows the patterns. He could describe most of them to you accurately if you asked him about it afterward, and he often does. What stops him is politeness. Asking how someone gets paid feels rude. Asking someone to explain again feels like admitting you're slow. So he nods, says it sounds interesting, and tells himself he'll research it later, which is the exact response every one of these patterns is engineered to produce. Every pattern in this video exploits the same thing, and it isn't greed, and it isn't stupidity, which is what most people assume. It's social discomfort. The reluctance to be the person in the room who slows things down, asks the obvious question, and risks looking suspicious or unsophisticated. Scams are not primarily designed to defeat your intelligence. They're designed to make it feel socially expensive to use your intelligence in the moment. That's why they arrive through friends, colleagues, and people you already trust. Not because those people are dishonest, but because trust suppresses questions. Denise isn't smarter than Marcus. She's just willing to be briefly awkward, and she has decided in advance that 4 seconds of awkwardness is cheap. That's genuinely the whole skill. Not detection, not expertise, not a 6th sense for danger. Just a tolerance for one uncomfortable question. And here's the part that makes it easier. A legitimate person is not offended by any of these questions because they've been asked them before. An honest professional answers plainly and often respects you more for asking. Discomfort at a direct question is itself a signal worth paying attention to. So the reaction to the question is often more informative than the answer. Watch what happens to their face before you evaluate what they say. Let's go back to that Tuesday afternoon message, because there's one detail I left out at the beginning of this video.
The question Denise sent back was pattern 7. She asked what the actual mechanism was, in specific terms, and asked it in a single sentence. She wasn't accusing anyone of anything. She wasn't rude, and she didn't announce that she suspected a scam or demand documentation. She just asked a plain question, politely, and then waited. And the silence that followed was the entire answer she needed. Marcus got the same message and asked nothing, because asking felt like he'd be insulting someone who had been nothing but friendly to him. A sophisticated fraud didn't defeat him. He was defeated by not wanting to seem difficult, which is what almost everyone is actually defeated by.
The 7 questions are the visible part of this. The real skill underneath them is deciding, before you're ever in the situation, that you're willing to ask. Floor plan rule for this one. Scams don't beat your intelligence. They beat your manners. Be slightly awkward, on purpose, every single time. So here's what to actually do with this, and it's smaller than you'd expect. Pick the one question from this video that you would find hardest to ask out loud, and that's almost certainly the one you need most. For most people, it's pattern 2. How does this person get paid? Because it feels like accusing someone of something when you're only asking a fact.
It isn't an accusation. The compensation structure is a neutral piece of information that any honest professional will tell you without hesitating. Practice it once in a low-stakes situation, and it stops feeling confrontational almost immediately because the discomfort was always anticipation rather than reality. None of this requires you to become suspicious of everyone, and that's not the goal. Living in permanent distrust is its own kind of cost. The goal is much narrower. 7 questions, asked only when money is moving, that take under 10 seconds each and cost you nothing to use. Marcus isn't gullible, and he isn't careless. He's polite, and almost every scam in existence is built specifically to convert politeness into compliance.
You don't need to spot the scam. You just need to ask the question that the scam cannot survive being asked. Same conversation, same pitch, same friendly person on the other end. Different question, completely different outcome. If breakdowns like this are useful to you, the psychology underneath why smart people lose money to obvious patterns, subscribe and I'll keep making them. And if there's a pitch you're looking at right now, run question 7 on it before you do anything else. I'll see you in the next one.